Ahoy there, my children of the watch. Welcome to Star Wars Transmissions Weekly Q&A. I'm your boy Dan, and today we've got some excellent questions, some really fun questions. I'm excited to dive into them. So let's get right to it. For our first question, Smart asks, will Din Djarin survive? Bro, I am scared for Din. I'm straight up worried about Din. It's not looking good for him. On one hand, I'm like, there's a very real chance he's going to die. And then on another hand, I'm like, how could you proceed with this series without Din Djarin? But man, it's not looking good for him. So Brandon Wayne, who serves as Din's body double, basically does a lot of the acting for Din when Pedro Pascal is doing the voice work. He responded to an Instagram story recently and said that the next episode is going to make you wish that you hadn't asked for more. It might hurt too much. Like, dog, what? Why you got to come at us like that, man? So on top of that, after season 2 of Mando ended, there were rumors swirling that once we got season 3 for season 4, the Mandalorian was potentially going to have a different series title and might be getting a name change. So when you couple that together, plus with the fact that Moff Gideon captured Din, bro, I'm worried. It's not looking good for Din right now. So I'm a little scared our boy might not make it. But then again, on the other hand, I'm like, how could you kill off Din in this series? He is such a beloved character. I mean, that was like Game of Thrones thing. They would kill major characters off throughout its tenure, but Star Wars is different, right? So on one hand, I'm thinking, yeah, it's not looking good for Din. Most likely, though, I think our guy's going to survive. I find it hard to believe he'll get killed, but it would not shock me in the slightest if he doesn't make it, because yeah, it's not looking the best right now for Din. Lewis, my man, welcome to the chat. So Lewis says, I think Bo is going to die. Good news for pro Din people. I could see Bo-Katan dying as well. I could see Bo dying, which could then maybe push Din into more of that leadership role that Bo-Katan has kind of assumed. I could see that happening. I really hope that we do not see Bo die. I don't want either of them to die. I don't want Bo-Katan to die. I don't want Din to die. I want those two to continue working together, helping to rebuild Mandalore, helping to unite the Mandalorian people. I've really enjoyed seeing that in this season, so I really hope that we don't have to experience those two dying. But yeah, when you factor in what Brandon Wayne said, when you factor in where the finale of season 7 ended, where season 7 ended, and then some of the rumors that we got a few years ago about the Mandalorian potentially getting a name change, I'm a little worried someone might die next episode, and I'm confident. I would wager every last penny that I have that Grogu's not dying. So if Brandon Wayne's coming out and saying it's going to hurt, someone that we are emotionally attached to is probably going to not have a good time next episode, we'll put it that way. So yeah, things aren't looking the best right now for Bo, for Din, and the Mandos. All right, so for our next question, Mir Razak asks, will Dawn of the Jedi focus on the Jedi from the EU? So if you missed it, there was a big announcement at Star Wars Celebration last week. It was revealed that, among other things, we're going to be getting a new film that will focus specifically on an era that Lucasfilm is calling the Dawn of the Jedi. So this film is going to be directed by James Mangold. James Mangold has directed Logan. He's directed the new Indiana Jones film that's coming out. and he's going to be exploring the birth of the Jedi Order. And when he pitched this movie, it was basically pitched as like a biblical epic in the Star Wars universe. So, as I mentioned, the time period that was specifically mentioned, it's being referred to as the Dawn of the Jedi. And that is there's a comic series with the same name from Legends called Dawn of the Jedi. And that series takes place about 25,000 years before the events of the original trilogy. And the comic focuses on an order of Force users called the Jedi Order. And they were basically the precursors of the Jedi Order. So they were the order that would eventually become the Jedi. And they have only appeared in Legends. They have not appeared in canon. So in canon, the Jedi Order, again, they're not a thing. The Dai Bendu are actually the precursors to the Jedi Order in the current canon. The Dai Bendu have been specifically mentioned in a few different canon novels. So in Poe Dameron's Freefall, which that's one novel I have not yet fully dived into, and then the expanded edition of the Rise of Skywalker novelization. So those two novels is primarily where the Dai Bendu have been mentioned, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Dai Bendu have also been mentioned in some reference books or in the Rise of Skywalker visual dictionary. I think that's where they were also mentioned. And because of that, I think that if, let's say, Lucasfilm wanted to bring the Jedi Order back into the canon, they wanted to canonize the Jedi Order and turn them into the precursors of the Jedi, I think that could easily be done. I think that could very easily be a retcon that Lucasfilm could do, because they're very quickly mentioned in the Rise of Skywalker novelization. As I mentioned, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's the Rise of Skywalker visual dictionary that they're mentioned in. And so that to me is when you get like just a brief mention of something in a novel, mention in a visual dictionary, and that's kind of it. That's really easy for Lucasfilm to retcon. And I think most people wouldn't be so upset about Lucasfilm retconning the Dai Bendu being the precursor to the Jedi Order. But I have to be honest with you, I kind of hope that they don't, if I'm being honest. Let me rephrase that. I kind of hope that they don't, if the idea is, hey, we're gonna make the Jedi Order become the precursors of the Jedi, and we're going to have them be exactly like how they were in the Dawn of the Jedi comic. Because one of my gripes with a lot of to be honest with you, a lot of the Legends stuff from the Old Republic, and then this time period, I guess this would still be considered the Old Republic, because it's about 25,000 years before the events of the the original trilogy. The writers tended to make things very, very similar to what we've come to be accustomed with from what we saw of the Jedi and from stories from the original trilogy. And I say that because the Jedi Order are basically the Jedi Order. There's a few differences between the two, but by and large, they are very, very similar. And that's one of my gripes with the Dawn of the Jedi comic. You're talking about an order that is predating the Jedi Order by we don't know exactly how long, but when we're seeing them come into being in the galaxy 25,000 years before the events of the Old Republic, or excuse me, I keep saying the Old Republic, the original trilogy, and for them to be so similar to the Jedi Order is something that I'm like, dude, come on, man. There's got to be some differences. So the main difference with the Jedi Order from the Jedi is essentially the Jedi Order. They kind of looked at the Force a little bit differently from the Jedi. So the Jedi Order saw the Force as three aspects of a whole: the Ashla, which they referred to as the light side of the Force; the Bogan, which was the dark side; and then the Bendu, which was when the Force was in balance. So when the Jedi Order was created, they were created on this planet called Tython, which we've gotten in canon. the Jedi Order realized that Tython itself reacted violently with these like really dangerous, deadly force storms when the force was out of balance. So because of this, the Jedi believed that their survival on Tython hinged on keeping the balance in force between the light side and the dark, which is definitely different from the Jedi Order, right? The Jedi Order, for them, balance is, hey, there's really no dark side in the galaxy, even though that's kind of impossible, right? So we want to minimize how much dark side is strewn throughout the galaxy, or how much dark side presence there is throughout the galaxy. We really want to have the light side be the predominant force power throughout the galaxy. That's what it means for the Jedi when the force is in balance, which again is going to differ from the Jedi Order. But aside from that, they were very, very similar. The Jedi Order had a council made up of masters. Masters of the Order took on Padawans. Those Padawans had to go on a journey. And if they survived that journey, they were then promoted to the rank of Jedi Ranger, which is essentially a knight for all intents and purposes. So it sounds very similar, right? And that's my gripe with the Dawn of the Jedi comic as a whole. So I'd rather that James Mangold, if his film follows, whether it's the Dai Bendu, the Jedi Order, or a completely different order or different sect, religious sect, that they wind up being very different from the Jedi Order, because again, this story is supposed to take place thousands of years before the events of the Clone Wars. So I want to see an order that is vastly different from the Jedi Order that we're accustomed to. If Mangold decides, hey, we're going to follow, at least to some extent, what was established in the Dawn of the Jedi comic, I would be cool. I'd be okay with that. I wouldn't really lose my mind over it. The Dawn of the Jedi comics has moments in it that are dope, and it has moments in it that I'm like, I don't know how I feel about it. But if Mangold were to pluck some things from that story, were to use some storylines, or maybe to base his story around the Jedi Order and kind of how they're structured in Dawn of the Jedi comic series, I'd be fine with that. I wouldn't be too upset about that, or really upset at all. So, but I would prefer that Mangold do something different, to stick with either the Dai Bendu or a different group if we're going to be exploring the birth of the Jedi, because I think that would be cooler, to be quite honest with you. All right, so moving and grooving to our next question. So Ganomon asks, who are your favorite Star Wars characters from the Disney Plus show? So we don't have a ton of characters to choose from, since there haven't been a ton of Disney Plus shows that have been released. So there's not a lot that we could choose, but there's several that immediately came to mind. So Din and Grogu. I mean, how could you not love Din and Grogu, right? I still, to this day, can very distinctly remember watching the series premiere and seeing Grogu for the first time, and just my jaw was on the floor. I was so dumbfounded that we were getting that little guy in this story, and Din is a great character, and I've really enjoyed seeing his growth throughout this series. So those two are two that instantly came to mind. And again, how could you not love those two? I feel like I'd be cheating if I were to say that I love all of Clone Force 99, but I do really enjoy them. But I'm going to pick one specifically. I'm going to say Crosshair. If I had to only choose one, I'm going to say Crosshair is my favorite, because when they were first introduced, and I'm going to say that they're a Disney Plus show, Disney Plus characters, even though, wait, actually, you know what? They were introduced when Disney Plus, yeah, because Clone Wars Season 7 was on Disney Plus. So yeah, scratch what I was just going to say. So Crosshair, when he was first introduced, I was like, I love this character. I love that he's kind of a dick. I love that he's a sniper. I love that he's got that toothpick. So there was a lot for me to like about Crosshair. So I instantly really enjoyed him. After season 2, I feel like I cannot not say Tech. I feel like I gotta throw Tech's name in the bucket as well. his sacrifice was horrible to watch in real time and gut-wrenching to watch, but also amazing to think about. Hey, my guy sacrificed his life to save the life of his brothers and his sister. And so, yeah, how could you not love Tech after season 2? I also really enjoy Luthen Rael's character. I like Luthen a lot. I like that he's morally gray. I've mentioned this a bunch in my streams. I really enjoy when stories are told in a way where good and evil is not specifically just like black and white, right? There's a gray and a murkiness to what it means to be good and to be evil. And we see that play out with Luthen Rael. He's kind of like morally ambiguous. He's doing what he thinks is right, but sometimes his motivations are well meant, but the means and the way he goes about that could be bad, right? We see him do some shady and questionable things in season 1 of Andor, and I like that. I like that we get that morally gray, morally ambiguous type of character. And Stellan Skarsgård is a phenomenal actor, and he was absolutely outstanding as Luthen Rael in season 1. So yeah, I'm going to say Luthen Rael is another character. Now, my last character that came to mind, and even though they're not canon, I've got to go with Margrave Juro. And specifically because of the looks, because we don't know too much about this character. We don't really know too much about their characteristics, their personality, their traits, because really we only get a very small amount of time that we spend with him in season 1 of Visions. But his design is absolutely sick. One of the coolest designs in all of Star Wars. So that's another character that was easily came to mind when I was thinking about characters that I enjoy from what we've gotten from Disney Plus so far. Ganamon mentioned. I got his favorite character, or their favorite characters, so I should say, Din Djarin, Bix Kayleen, and Hunter. So solid picks, Ganamon. All right, so moving on to our next question. So we got 2 questions from Steffi Fox. What if we got to see who Grogu's parents are? And what if Anakin was gay? And I felt like I wanted to answer both of these questions. I would be very surprised if we got to learn anything about Grogu's parents, to be quite honest with you. I feel like that probably would not happen. You know, George Lucas was very adamant about not revealing too much about Yoda's species, and Lucasfilm seems to be following that same sort of guideline, we'll say. So I don't think that we would get much information about Grogu's parents. I think we probably would not. But if we did, Jesus Christ, I would probably start bawling my eyes out. Like, whenever we get the Grogu Order 6 scenes or these moments that are like heartbreaking with Grogu, I'm like on the verge of tears every time. So I can only imagine if we got a scene that shows us about Grogu's early days with his parents, getting some more information about his early life, I would probably be like floored, possibly in tears. So I would love it. Could you imagine freaking Grogu as a little infant? Like, look how freaking cute he is here. Could you imagine him as an infant? Oh, it would be incredible. So I would love it, but I don't think it's going to happen. I find it hard to believe that Lucasfilm would show us that. Now, let's answer your second question, Steffi Fox. So what if Anakin was gay? So, man, if Anakin was gay, it would change things. Wouldn't change everything. Let's make this image bigger. I typed I can't remember what I typed into Google, like Anakin gay or something like that. And I saw this image, I was like, oh yes, this is absolutely perfect. If Anakin was gay, I think some things would change story-wise, but not as much as I initially thought. And hear me out. So if Anakin were gay, then that would mean we wouldn't get his relationship with Padme, right? So he doesn't fall in love with Padme, and that means there's no Luke or Leia, right? So that would change things in a pretty drastic way, because Luke and Leia were basically born to combat the rise of Darth Vader and Darth Sidious. The Force willed those two into existence to be able to combat the increasingly growing dark side that was consuming the galaxy. So now if Anakin Organa did not fall in love with Padme, Luke and Leia most likely are not born, right? But the thing about Anakin is my guy is a straight up, make this smaller again, he's a straight up stage 5 clinger. He latches on to any person in his life that he was extremely close with. So first it's his mother. After his mother, then it's Qui-Gon Jinn. Once Qui-Gon died, then it became Obi-Wan Kenobi. Then once Padme became more present in his life, then it was Padme. He is a stage 5 clinger, and part of that is because of the loss of his mother in his life. That was very difficult for him to deal with. The death of Qui-Gon Jinn. Then when he's a Padawan in his older years, the death of his mother. So as much as I like joke that Anakin is a stage 5 clinger, like you can kind of understand why when you frame it in that way. And I say that because even though Anakin, let's say, doesn't wind up with Padme, my thought is, keeping in mind how he clings to individuals, he most likely would have clung to someone else. He probably would have fallen in love with another individual and fell in love with that individual. And then if he had any sort of premonitions, or if there's any possibility of that individual dying, the same sort of stuff that we see happen in the prequel trilogy in Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, I think would still play out in a similar sort of way, just because of how emotionally attached that he gets to people. So without Luke or Leia, again, I think that some kind of being would have been willed by the Force to be able to combat, even if at that point it's just Darth Sidious. Anakin, let's say, has not turned into Darth Vader yet. The Force would have willed someone into existence to be able to combat the growing power of Darth Sidious. So could be someone that was currently alive at that time, or someone yet to be born. So I think at some point Anakin probably still would have fell to the dark side, just because of who he is as an individual and his personality. And I think he still would have became Darth Vader, because I think that emotional attachment that he has to people would have gotten to a point that would have been toxic and would have been an impetus to him still turning into Darth Vader. So I think a lot of what we see happen still plays out. But could you imagine if Lucasfilm was like, yo, we're going to make Anakin Skywalker gay? People would absolutely lose their minds. They would go in freaking sane. I mean, even if we just had a main character in a Star Wars series or a movie that was gay, people would lose their minds, which I think is a shame. I'm all for inclusivity. I'm all for stories being told that are not made for just white dudes like me. They're made for everyone to be able to enjoy. So, let's get more main characters that are queer, that are trans, that are people of color, more female leads. Representation, that stuff matters. And even if there's a large number of mouth-breathing knuckle draggers that lose their minds, I say fuck them. I hope that Lucasfilm starts to, and they really have done a good job, I should say, to their credit, they have done a good job of making stories that are more inclusive for folks, but I feel like a lot of that's been more on like the comic and book side of things. With films and series right now, I think their thing has been more white females, which that's a step in a good direction, but I would like to see more individuals that are not just white, not just male, playing lead roles in a Star Wars project. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, now that I'm saying this, I believe the Acolyte is going to have several Asian characters that are going to be the primary the lead characters of that story, which I think is dope. You know, we've gotten for decades stories that featured just white male leads, and they were made for white jamokes like me. So again, I would rather Lucasfilm start to be more inclusive in its storytelling and, you know, tell stories that are made for everyone. I think one of the things that bums me out when I think about the Star Wars fandom is there is a pocket of the fandom that wants to gatekeep and doesn't want to let stories be told for anyone other than white males, whether they want to say that that's true or not. To me, that's how it feels. And so, you know, I want more stories being told that are inclusive. And as I mentioned, in the comics and the books, we have definitely gotten that. Like when I was thinking about this question, there's a High Republic novel, and in the High Republic Adventures, there's a character, Kantam Sai. They're a non-binary individual in Midnight Horizon, which I absolutely freaking love that book. There's a part of that book where Kantam actually has a relationship with a human male. And then Kantam leaves the Jedi Order for a time, and just reading about his relationship with the character. And what was the character's name? Was it Atar or Alar? I think it was Atar. Just reading about their relationship and how that affected Kantam in his connection with the Force, and then as a Jedi. I love that. I thought it was so great. And I remember talking to Danielle about it and just saying like, hey, imagine if you or I were non-binary, or imagine if we were queer, like how dope it would be to read that. And that's the sort of stuff that I really commend Lucasfilm for doing. But again, I want to see that more so on the film and television and film side of things. But yeah, I say Lucasfilm, keep doing it. I'm sure there's going to be those goblins, those trolls that are going to lose their minds about it. But again, fuck them. Star Wars is for everyone. All right. So let's keep moving and grooving. That's a great segue into our next question, which comes from Raz Elite, who asks, how have you been liking Phase 2 of the High Republic? So Phase 2, let's make this just a little larger. Phase 2 of the High Republic, we're currently in the heart of it, and that series is taking place in 382 BBY, so about 150 years before the events of Phase 1. Phase 1 starts off, Phase 1 of the High Republic, I should say, starts off in 232 BBY. That's when Light of the Jedi takes place. So we're about 150 years in the past with Phase 2. I have absolutely loved Phase 1 of the High Republic. Like, it was so refreshing. It was incredible. I loved everything about it. Even the like middle grade novels made for youngsters. I loved everything about the High Republic. It was almost a damn near home run for me. Phase 2 hasn't felt as impactful for me. It hasn't hit me the way that Phase 1 did. It's been enjoyable. Don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed it, but I don't think it hasn't been anywhere near as enjoyable and as like holy shit as Phase 1 was. And I think the main reason, at least for me, the main reason behind that is the villain. The villain in Phase 1 it's the Nile, right? And they're led by specifically Marchion Ro. They felt like an absolute serious threat. And Marchion Ro is an incredible character. He is written incredibly. And I really got to understand his motivations and why he was doing what he was doing. Phase 2, kind of like the villain hasn't made me feel that way. I'm kind of unsure. You know, even when there are moments when I'm like, hey, with what's Marchion Ro's motivations here? Or why is he doing the things that he's doing? It doesn't leave me kind of like scratching my head. It's like, oh, okay, I'm hoping we learn more about this. And then maybe later in Phase 1, we did get some more information, which was great. Phase 2, the main, let's make this larger to go on to the next image. With Phase 2, the main villain so far has been this religious order religious order, or I should say a religious cult of Force users called the Path of the Open Hand, and they're led by this woman called the Mother. Her name is Alicia Zeveron. So this is her right here. This is the Mother right here in the middle of this image. I kind of, at this point, I'm like, I don't understand what her motivations are. I don't get why she's doing the things that we've seen her do. Now, granted, I should also preface this by saying I haven't read every single thing in the High Republic Phase 2. I've read the majority of it at this point, but not everything. But I'm still left kind of like scratching my head. What's the Mother's motivation here? What's the impetus for what she's doing? And for me, the other thing is that much of the turmoil that we're seeing in Phase 2, at the center of that is this conflict between the planets Irono and Iram. I don't know at this point how that conflict is impacting the wider scale of the galaxy. How is this conflict that's localized to one sector of the galaxy, and these planets are not in the Republic at this point in the timeline? What are the implications for the galaxy at large at this point? And maybe that's something that's going to be explained in the later parts of Phase 2, but that's been my issue with Phase 2 so far. I'm just kind of thinking to myself, where's this story going here? What's the point of it? I also think that some of the authors from Phase 2 they're not my favorite authors in Star Wars, so I think that's also part of it. So yeah, Phase 2 hasn't hit me in the way that Phase 1 has. And so, as I mentioned, I still am enjoying Phase 2. Phase 1 was like, I figured it would be tough to beat. Phase 1, it was incredible from start to finish. It was absolutely incredible. So I figured it was going to be tough for Lucasfilm to be able to surpass that as far as my enjoyment and my excitement goes. But yeah, so far I've read Path of Deceit. That was written by Tessa Gratton and Justina Ireland. I didn't think it was the greatest. It had its moments, but overall I didn't think it was that great. It's probably not a novel I would revisit. I've also read Convergence by Zoraida Cordova. That book had moments I was like, oh, hell yeah. Had some really cool moments, some really interesting characters, but I felt like the book would build to these moments where I'm like, yes, this is where I'm excited where the story's going. This seems like it's going to be really cool. And then it just kind of didn't build up to anything that I thought it was going to be, and almost felt unclimactic. Is that a word? Underclimactic? It just kind of didn't feel as impactful for me. And again, I think part of that is because so much of the story has been localized into just very small pockets of the galaxy at this point. Those two novels are set in Dalna for Path of Deceit, and then Convergence is set on, you travel kind of back and forth between Irono and Iram. Now, the Battle of Jeddah, The Battle of Jeddah was dope. That book was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed the characters in that book. And that book is, I refer to it as a book, but really it was released as like an audio drama. But I have the book version of it, the script of that audio drama. And I really liked it a lot. It was still localized. It takes place strictly on Jeddah. So we don't leave Jeddah at any point in the novel, at least as far as I remember. But I really liked that book a lot. I really liked the Jedi in that book. We got a little bit more information about what the Mother might be up to. So I'm hoping that, hey, based on what was in Battle of Jeddah, that maybe Phase 2 is going to start really going in an upswing for me. But Battle of Jeddah was dope. So that book was written by, or audio drama was written by George Mann. And George Mann also wrote Quest for Planet X, which I have, but I haven't read yet. So I'm looking forward to reading that. So yeah, I still have Cataclysm to read. I still have Quest of Planet X to read. I say all this about Phase 2, but the comics have been excellent. So the High Republic comic series by Cavan Scott has been spectacular. The Blade by Charles Soule has been spectacular. And again, go back to what I mentioned before about the authors. To me, that's no surprise because I really, really like Cavan Scott and I love Charles Soule's writing. So those two, it was no surprise to me that I really enjoyed those comics from them. I haven't yet to dive back into the High Republic Adventures comic series, just because it's on Dark Horse and I haven't gotten those comics yet, but I will read them at some point. I really enjoy Daniel Jose Older's writing. He's another author in Star Wars that I really enjoy, so I have faith that the High Republic Adventures comic series is gonna be dope from him. So yeah, I think at this point I'm struggling a little bit with seeing how this story connects to Phase 1. The fact that it's been a little bit more localized than what we got in Phase 1. But I'm hoping that we still got some more stories that are going to drop in Phase 2. I still have more stuff that has been dropped that I need to read still. So I'm hoping that as more time goes on, I'll feel a little bit more positive, I guess. I don't know if positive is the right word. More excited and enthusiastic about Phase 2, because right now it's been more enjoyable as opposed to like, holy crap, this is amazing, like Phase 1 was. But you know, either way, the High Republic has still been very, very enjoyable. All right, Johan, welcome to the chat. Sonia, welcome to the chat. Glad you guys are here. Just a little bit smaller. Come on. There we go. All right, so next up, Snow Miser asks, do you prefer Vader's first years in canon or Legends more? This is a great question. I think I'm going to have to go with canon simply because Charles Soule's, I mentioned Charles Soule earlier. I love his writing. He's one of my favorite authors in Star Wars, and that includes Legends. I love his writing, and I specifically love Dark Lord of the Sith, his comic series that came out in 2017, I believe. And that comic series, it shows Vader's early days. It shows Vader right after Revenge of the Jedi and then his subsequent years. So I love that story. I love what we see from Vader. I love what we see from Sidious in that story. We get some excellent moments about the Sith. We get some crazy moments with I don't want to spoil it in case you haven't read it yet. So I'm not going to reveal anything because it's a comic that I highly recommend, but I love it. And again, I love Charles Soule. I love how he writes about the Force. I love how he writes about characters. I love that his stories typically will drop like little nuggets of lore for nerds like me that when I see it, I start like freaking out. So because of that, I do like, I have to say I like Vader's canon story more than in his early canon story, from more so than his early moments in Legends. It's been so dope to see that play out in Dark Lord of the Sith. Now, one thing I want to mention, I didn't take a screenshot of this, but Snow Miser pointed out that in canon, Vader isn't as weak as he was when he started out in Legends, which is something that I actually talked about in another Q&A a few months ago. I think it's back in January, maybe? I think it was January. Maybe it was February. I can't remember. But it makes sense to me that, you know, Vader's anger, his sadness, his regret, that would make him into this absolutely powerful killing machine that was deeply connected to the dark side of the Force. So I love that. And that's something that we see in Dark Lord of the Sith. And throughout other canon stories, not just ones that Charles Soule's written, but in Legends, I do like how Vader's trauma and his psychological scars limited his power. You know, a lot of people seem to think from Legend stories that, oh, because Anakin or Vader, I should say, lost limbs, that made him weaker. if that were the case, Anakin would have been weaker in Revenge of the Sith, even though, he only lost one arm. But in Legends, it was established in, what's the name of the book? Rise of the Dark Lord. Oh, what? I'm totally drawing a blank on the name of the book right now. Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader. In that book, it's established that Vader's powers were initially limited, not because of his injuries, but because of Vader's psychological and emotional trauma. That's what limited his power. And I like that. I like that idea that, hey, Vader's emotional trauma, those scars that he's endured emotionally and mentally, have hindered his ability to connect to the Force, and thus made him somewhat of a diminished Sith Lord and a diminished Force user. But eventually, even in Legends, his power grew to the point where he became one of the strongest Sith Lords in existence. So I do like that about Legends. I also think that it's a really cool concept, considering that the love of Vader's life, right, is dead at that point. Vader had to duel his master, his previous master, and Obi-Wan jacked him up, chopped off a bunch of his limbs. Anakin, or Vader, I should say, slaughtered a bunch of Jedi at the temple. His master, Sidious, is super manipulative, is deceitful, and is just an all-around terrible person. So yeah, I like that idea that, hey, all of that contributed to Vader being severely messed up. I do also like, there's a comic, is it called Age of the Empire? Agents of the Empire, I believe, is the name of the comic, where we see Vader in his early days travel to Sereno, and because of the great houses of Sereno, because they backed Count Dooku during the Clone Wars, he makes the heads of the heirs of those great houses kill their fathers to show their loyalty to the Emperor and the Empire, and then swear fealty to the Empire, which is just wild. And I love that. I thought that was sick. So Legends definitely has some cool moments, but again, I'm going with canon because I love Charles Soule. Dark Lords of the Sith is one of my favorite things I've read of any Star Wars story, Legends or canon. So yeah, I'm going with canon for Vader's early days. Ward Lafferty, welcome to the chat, my friend. Have I read Battle Scars yet? I'm actually reading it right now. I've been struggling with it because I like novels that have shorter chapters, or have like little pauses in their chapters, and nice spots for me to leave off, because I will read each night before I go to bed. And so some nights I want to read a bunch. Some nights I'm like, man, I'm tired as hell. I'm only going to read for like 10 minutes. And was it Sam Skaggs? I can't remember the author's name right now that wrote Battle Scars. At least the early chapters tend to be a little bit longer, and I don't have a good spot each night where I can put my bookmark and finish up for the night. So typically I got to read like a chapter every night. And sometimes when it's a little bit longer, if I only want to read for like 10 minutes, I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to mess around on my phone for a little bit. So I've been struggling with Battle Scars. I haven't gotten through it as much as I would like to yet, but I am reading it right now. I have very much enjoyed it so far. I'm like 5 or 6 chapters deep, and I'm very intrigued by where the story is going. And so it's been fun to read. And I figured it'd be great because we got Jedi Survivor dropping next week. So yeah. All right. So for our last question, Damien Para asks, let me make this a little bit bigger. Damien Para asks, could we see the return of Bail Organa in the Ahsoka series? So, unless it's going to be a flashback, we ain't seeing Bail in Ahsoka, because Ahsoka is going to take place, at least as far as we know right now, in around 8 to 9 BBY, around the same time period that The Mandalorian is taking place. So again, 8 to 9. Did I say BBY? I meant 8 to 9 ABY. So it's 9 years after the Battle of Yavin. Bail died in 0 BBY. So Bail was on Alderaan when the Death Star destroyed Alderaan. So there's a short story from a certain point of view, the first one that came out, that's told in conjunction with A New Hope, the story that we get in A New Hope. There's a short story that is specifically told from the vantage point of Bail and his life, Breha, Organa, as they're on Alderaan, right when the freaking Death Star shows up and blows up the planet. It is like straight up chilling and harrowing to read that short story. And seeing Bail in the final moments of his life with his wife was gut-wrenching. It's an excellent short story. I really like it. So because of that, Bail's not going to be showing up in Ahsoka unless we get a flashback scene, or I mentioned this in a video that I dropped last week, a theory that I had about Ahsoka. I'm wondering if in Ahsoka we might start to see some time travel happening. We know about the World Between Worlds from Star Wars Rebels. So World Between Worlds was this mythical plane within the Force that existed outside of time and space, and it connected all points in time together. We saw that in Rebels. We can see the World Between Worlds in the Ahsoka trailer, looks very much like the World Between Worlds. So if Ahsoka can access the World Between Worlds in the Ahsoka series, what's to stop her from going back in time and dueling an Inquisitor? Which is why I theorized that, hey, that looks like the eighth brother. I think Ahsoka is going to be traveling through time. And if that's the case, then yeah, we can very easily get Bail Organa appearing in Ahsoka. I think that could happen. Or we can get a flashback scene. So one of either a flashback or Ahsoka is going to be traveling into different time periods in the Star Wars timeline. If we don't do that in Ahsoka, then Bail's not showing up because sadly our homeboy is dead by 8-9 ABY. I like the idea that Ahsoka is going to be utilizing the World Between Worlds because it begs the question, hey, these dark Jedi that she's battling, how the hell are they around? Did they come from a different time period? Are they clones of certain people? I saw some people theorizing because if you look at their armor and even their lightsaber, kind of looks old. It doesn't look like anything we're accustomed to from the prequels, the Clone Wars, and afterwards, right? What if these are ancient Sith? I've heard people throwing around Darth Bane and his apprentice Darth Zana, which would be incredible. I would lose my mind if that's the case. I've seen people say that the Dark Jedi is Joruus C'baoth. I theorized this in my video. I didn't think about Joruus C'baoth when I did my Ahsoka trailer breakdown, but I did theorize a few weeks ago that, hey, I think we're seeing what we're seeing in The Mandalorian. All signs are pointing to Thrawn coming into this story at some point. And sure enough, of course, we did get Thrawn. And one of the things I mentioned is that, hey, if we start to get Thrawn, and the writers of the story potentially follow Thrawn's story from Legends and the heir to the Jedi, the Timothy Zahn trilogy, Thrawn trilogy, that, hey, maybe we start to get Joruus C'baoth. Joruus C'baoth was a clone, a dark Jedi clone of a Jedi Master whose name was Joruus C'baoth. And in the Timothy Zahn trilogy, Joruus C'baoth was a clone that was created by the Emperor, and he was a dark Jedi, so a dark side Force user. I could see it being any of those. I could see it being an ancient Sith Lord. I could see it being a dark Jedi clone of a Jedi Master. I could see it being, I've seen some people say kind of like what is going to happen in Jedi Survivor, that, hey, maybe this is a Jedi from an ancient time period that is upset with the Jedi Order. They've accessed the World Between Worlds, and now they feel like, hey, I could take over the galaxy at this point. The Jedi Order is no longer around, and this Sith dark side user, I could handle them. So that's another theory as well. I'm open to any and all of those. I would love for that to happen. So Pavel, excuse me, in the chat says, Bail and the whole planet get blown up in 0BBY. Yeah, I was just mentioning that before. From a certain point of view book. Oh, what the heck is the short story called? Let me see if I could find it quickly. I can't remember. Eclipse. That's the name of the short story. So yeah, from a certain point of view is excellent. We're getting the from a certain point of view Return of the Jedi. Is it coming out this summer? I think, or is it in the fall? It's coming out soon. It's coming out at some point in 2023. So yeah, looking forward to that. But anyway, whether we get Bail in Ahsoka or not, I am so pumped for Ahsoka. Like, I cannot even begin to tell you guys how excited I am for Ahsoka. Danny Girl told me this after, because I was like losing my mind over the Ahsoka trailer. She and I were both like so pumped about it, and she was reading about it. And she told me that Kevin Kiner is going to be doing the score for Ahsoka, which I am so freaking pumped for. It makes me even more excited for Ahsoka. Kevin Kiner has done the score for The Bad Batch this season. I think he might have did the score for season 1 as well. I'm not 100% sure of that, but he's done the score for season 2. He at least did the score for the Siege of Mandalore arc of season 7 of the Clone Wars. Wouldn't shock me if he did the entire season. Did he do the score for Obi-Wan? I'm not sure, but regardless, the music in the Siege of Mandalore is incredible. The music in season 2 of The Bad Batch is incredible, and the music in Ahsoka was dope. So like, I am so pumped that Kevin Kiner is going to be doing the score for Ahsoka. I think, guys, we are in for a serious treat with Ahsoka. I think we are going to be like screaming for joy with that series when it drops. I have a lot of faith that we're going to get an excellent Ahsoka series. I would wager money that Ahsoka is going to be dope. So Yaron says, Bail is the Mexican good daddy. Dude, what's the actor's name? I'm totally drawing a blank on this actor's name. I love this actor. He's great. Whenever I see him pop up and stuff, I'm like, hell yes. I always call him Bail. I can never remember his name. Danny always has to correct me because she knows the actor's name. We both love Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and I love when he appears in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He's great in it. He's an excellent actor. He's dope. And yeah, whenever we get to see Bail show up, it's always great. But that's it for questions, guys. That's it for this week's questions. I was pretty pumped about the questions this week. I cannot wait for the finale of Mandalorian. I think we're going to be in for a world of hurt, but I'm still excited for it nonetheless. Danny Girl and I are going to be doing our stream, our breakdown of the episode when it drops, when it drops on Wednesday evening. We've been doing the streams at 8 p.m. It's a little bit easier for us to stream at that time with our work schedules. I have had something come up that may change my schedule next week. So if it's not at 8 p.m. on Wednesday, it might have to be later or maybe even on Thursday. But whatever it is, whatever happens with my schedule, at the bare minimum, Danny Girl and I are going to be doing a stream breaking down the finale of The Mandalorian. I'm hoping that within the next week or two, I have my new computer built. I'm so bummed. I was working on my computer today and I was like, oh, dude, I'll have my computer done today, until I realized I need some extra. I don't necessarily need, I want some extra fans for my case. And because of that, I decided I was going to stop where I was working at, going to wait for these fans to come in the mail. And hopefully by next week, I'll have my new computer all built. And I say that because once my computer is built, I am going to 100% get back into streaming me playing video games. My current computer does not do well with me streaming video games. So that's why I haven't been able to do any live streams with me playing Fallen Order or even Halo, just because my computer is It's seen better days. So hopefully by next week, I should have my computer all built, and then I can get back into live streaming, playing video games. I'm like super excited for Jedi Survivor. I'm 100% going to be streaming, playing Jedi Survivor. I think what I'm going to do is just play the game from start to finish with you guys. I think that's my plan. So keep a lookout for that. And then, yeah, keep a lookout on the channel for videos that we drop. I would say every couple of days at this point now. I'm getting back in the groove of dropping videos, shorts that we drop daily, and then streams that come here and there. I cannot wait. We got Visions the day after my birthday. My birthday is on May 3rd. I always joke with my mom, like, why couldn't you waited just 24 hours and let me have been born on May 4th? So I'm hoping that I'm going to do something for Visions. I'm extremely excited for Visions to drop. So keep your eyes out for that. Now is a good time, you jabronis, to like this video, subscribe to Star Wars Transmissions, show us some love. I always appreciate the love and support that you guys provide us. I feel weird doing this, but hey, I did make a Ko-Fi recently. So if you want to support the channel and send some money my way, feel free. If not, totally cool if you don't. Your support just by watching my videos means the world to me, and that's more than enough. I love you guys. Like I tell this to Danny all the time. Like, it's surprising that people like to listen to me talking about Star Wars. That's enough for me right there. But with that said, you knuckleheads, I haven't eaten dinner yet. I'm so freaking hungry. I got to eat some dinner. Probably going to relax a little bit and then probably get my buns whooped. I'm going to probably play some Halo, maybe a little MLB The Show, and then call it an evening. But yeah, we got a lot of exciting stuff to look forward to in Star Wars that the channel will be talking about and breaking down. So make sure to keep your eyes peeled. So with that said, my friends, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.